following program is intended for mature audiences.
The time is now for the hardest hitting, yet completely trivial football show on the planet.
You are in rarefied territory.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Broken Helmet.
Let's rock.
Man, coming to you live on tape with the snap for this Thursday, April 13th, 2023. It is a glorious day in the NFL, specifically for Washington Commanders fans, Redskins fans, football team fans, whatever the hell you're calling yourselves nowadays. It is a tremendous day for them. I said the NFL, I don't really give a shit, but for the Washington football fans, it is big because the great Dan Snyder, the monster that has just been stomping around NFL parks for 24 years, I think it is finally out the door. He is gone. No whammy, no whammy, no whammy. Stop. He is finally out the goddamn door.
We're caged for nothing.
It's pretty amazing when you look at it. Prior to Schneider coming on as the owner of the Washington Redskins, they had, 3 championships, I think, if I'm not mistaken. 3 championships. And he's been around for 24 years. And I think they've had a couple of playoff wins since. I mean, it's crazy. Crazy. Look it up real quick. 3 Super Bowls, yep. In the 20 years prior to his takeover, he's been with the league 24 years. So in the equal amount of time, the Redskins have won 2 playoff games. I mean, pretty astonishing, the success that they had, obviously under the great Joe Gibbs. And then Schneider comes along, and it is just a disaster in Washington. But hopefully, no more. Hopefully, that colossal POS, as everybody said, is out the door.
Don't be rude.
Don, what is he, a friend of yours? Stop. Anyway, the stories are well documented, I guess, although maybe the details have not quite come out. We've talked about on the podcast, at least I have. I don't know if I have with my brother, but there is friends, a common friend who has shared stories of some of the behind-the-scenes natures of the Redskins debauchery. And, yeah, it's some of it's pretty fucking nutty. So, but, if you really dig into it, nobody knows what goes on behind the closed doors of anybody in the NFL. Coaches, owners, players. I mean, if you really wanted to dig deep, I am sure nobody would like anything that they find on anything related to the NFL. I mean, these players, come on. These kids are 20-something coming out of college and then making millions and millions of dollars. And then they buy mansions now with NDA documents ready to go in the closet. And, as soon as those things are signed and that $1 million house is packed with people, who the hell knows what goes on? It's none of anybody's business. Now, obviously, it gets to be a little different with the Schneider situation because it ends up being a thematic issue that goes throughout the entire organization. So, obviously, a little bit different. But the point being is that, let's not start diving into every single little thing in the NFL because nobody's going to like what they see. But anyway, Schneider is out. And how fast this changes, because we talked about it on Wednesday, and it looked like it wasn't going to happen, or you didn't know it was going to happen. It was up in the air. I mean, the story on Wednesday was Jeff Bezos was out. Now, obviously, the reason that Jeff Bezos was out because must have had a hot lead on one of these other offers, and so Bezos pulls out, which is probably the origin of that story. So here we go. Here is the story. This is how it starts going, right? Because earlier on Thursday, it's like, there's we got a live one here. We got something on the wire here, and it looked to be that as we mentioned, Josh Harris, co-owner of the 76ers and the Devils, had a strong offer going that was going to be accepted. However, ESPN said, "Oh, wait, hold the phone." ESPN said Canadian billionaire Stephen, I'm not even going to try to know the name, Agapoulos Islands, some shit like that. Steve A. and his family were in the mix. They were in the mix, right? And then, of course, an anonymous source tells ESPN it's a head-to-head race, anyone's game, right? So ESPN hedges themselves as they have John Kime here read this article that I'm pulling stuff from, and meanwhile, they also have anonymous sources within saying, well, but this Canadian billionaire Steve A, he's also in the game. So, they cover their ass at all times. Solid journalism, as it was designed to be in the dawn of journalism. So this is what we get nowadays in 2023. So anyway, this was earlier in the day. So, it looks to be a head-to-head race, but Josh Harris pulls ahead. Tillman Fertitta, he's a frittata. He makes great eggs in the morning. But owner of the Rockets, and obviously everybody that knows however to pronounce his name is going to be like, oh, shit, you don't know how to pronounce his name? No, he's frittata. So the Eggman is going to pull his bid, which was $5.6 billion. I think he said that, he was drawing a line in the sand. I'm not going above $5.6 billion. If they can get something higher, then it's good for them, right? But here, you go $5.6 billion to $6 billion. I mean, if you're making a bid for $5.6 billion, why don't you just make the bid for $6 billion? I mean, obviously, you don't. What's that extra money? What's the extra $400 million? Who gives a shit? You're talking about fucking $6 billion. But anyway, and we'll get to it. It's not like your investment isn't going to pull in returns down the road, because Snyder probably pulled off one of the greatest purchases of all time. And we will talk about those figures in a little bit. But anyway, so he says he's not going to do anything. He's out. And so it's those two. And then it looks as though that, Harris was going to pull ahead. And then, before you know it, boom! It's a done deal, because then later on in the day, it comes out that that group led by Harris has a non-exclusive deal, which is fully financed, not signed, but fully financed to buy the team. Now, it not being signed means that somebody else could sneak in their back door and make a bid over them. So there was probably some design, there's some rationale behind the design of doing the fully financed but not signed deal to see if anybody else wanted a last second bid to get in there. Probably Steve A, to see if he would come in there and make a bid, but who the fuck knows. So anyway, ultimately, in the end, it ends up being a record, if I'm not mistaken, for a sports team being sold. The it's an NFL record, because the prior NFL record was $4.65 billion, and that was for the Broncos last year, led by the Walmart guy, Rob Walton. So anyway, I guess the way that this works now is that bid for $6 billion will get brought up at the league meetings, which is end of April. Those are going to be taking place in Minneapolis, by the way. And then I think there's a committee. Hold on, I had it right here. An 8-member finance committee will examine the documents and then put it to vote to the other 31 owners. That is just that's just process at this point, because it is going to get accepted. There is nothing to say that it won't. Along with Harris, there are other people in this same group. In the group, who else was there? There was a guy, Mitchell Rales, a D.C. billionaire, and then also, as we mentioned yesterday, Magic Johnson, the Hall of Famer. And so if you want to talk about how much these guys are worth, let's go into the new owners of the Washington Redskins. So out goes Snyder, and in comes Harris. So if you want to know a little bit about Harris, if you know about the greater landscape of the economy, you will know who he is, because he is an individual, grew up in Maryland, but co-founded Apollo Management. Apollo Management is a just fucking Godzilla asset management firm. He did that in 1990. His net worth right now is $5.8 billion. As for his buddy Mitchell Rails, I said a DC billionaire. Well, Rails' net worth is $5.5 billion. And then you got Johnson. Who the hell knows what Magic's worth? But I mean, he's in the hundreds of millions. I mean, he's not a billionaire, or maybe he is a billionaire. I haven't heard that, right? Who are the entertainment and athletic billionaires, right? Jay-Z knocked him off in his one song, right? But there's Jay-Z, Rihanna, Dr. Dre from his headphone deal. I think LeBron, right? LeBron is in there too. Jordan, maybe Johnson is in there. Johnson, obviously, after he retired, he got involved with Magic Johnson Studios. I think he also got involved in Starbucks. I can't remember everything that he got involved with, but he has knocked it out of the park. So kudos to my man, to Magic Johnson, because growing up, I was a huge Magic Johnson fan. I still am, even though he's not great in the media. He tried to be a media personality with the Magic Johnson show, and then he did the ESPN. I don't think he's doing the ESPN basketball anymore. I never watched the halftime or the pre-shows anyway, but he was up there for a while. Him, Jalen Rose, Bill Simmons, right? It just really wasn't working out. If I remember the stories from listening to the BS podcast, I don't think that Simmons was a huge fan after the fact once he left the ESPN. But whatever the case was, Magic didn't turn out to be a good personality, but he was a phenomenal entrepreneur, and congrats to you in getting yourself a piece of ownership for the Washington Redskins. Now formerly the Redskins. I did it. See, yesterday I was happy. I said the Commanders, and then today I end up saying Redskins. So whatever. Football team, Redskins, Commanders. They will go to Harris's group, including Mr. Rails and Mr. Magic Johnson. So let's see if there's any other goodies in this story that are worth noting. Obviously, the deal will include FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. Also, the team's practice facilities in Ashburn, Virginia. And then we talked about Snyder before and how he just made out like a goddamn bandit. And if you're ready for this,
it's about to get all stupid up in here.
He purchased the Washington franchise in May of 99 for, if you're ready for it, $800 million. $800 million, and he just sold it for $6 billion. Billion with a B as in big fucking wallet. That's what you got now, there, sir. So, bought for $800 million, sold for $6 billion. So, I mean, that is a good return on your dollar. So, and that was part of some of the articles that I was reading yesterday was, it's a win for the NFL and a win for Redskin fans, but it's a loss because, a billionaire gets super rich. And this asshole guy just made tons of money by selling the team, and he doesn't deserve it. Come on. Doesn't deserve it. He bought the team for $800 million, and when he bought it for $800 million, I'm sure everybody was looking at him and being like, "You buying a fucking NFL team for $800 million, you asshole?" I mean, he did turn out to be a really shitty owner, right? But I mean, come on, enough. The guy invested well and just made himself a cool $5.4 billion or $5.2 billion or. Yeah, $5.2 billion, right? 800 minus the $6 billion is $5.2 billion. So, I mean, I wish I could invest that well. God damn it, I wouldn't be doing a goddamn fucking podcast in my basement of my house, that's for sure. I would at least have a nicer basement. But anyway, so other than that, there was stories left and right going on around this one. I read, The Ringer had an article where it touched on some of the, as they said, quick, quote-unquote, low light reel. And they were funny, some of the things that were mentioned here. He sued a decades-long fan who tried to back out of a ticket renewal agreement. I mean, dude, PSLs, I researched them in 08, 09 when I worked at Admit One in the city, flipping tickets, specifically focused on the Jets, ticket inventory, and I did a research project on PSLs. They're losers. So kudos to the guy trying to back out. And it's funny that Schneider sued this guy who had owned the tickets for decades long and didn't want to be in the renewal agreement anymore. So he is kind of a dick. He also avoided a congressional subpoena. Oh, this was awesome. And I think, again, we might have mentioned this when it happened at the time, but he got congressionally subpoenaed, and then he said, hey, you know what? I can't come because I'm on my yacht. I'm on vacation. I'm just chilling. Oh, I mean, that guy just went out on his super yacht and just was like, yeah, I'm over in Greece. I'm hanging out, and I can't come to Congress.
That guy is a disgrace to the uniform.
Well, not in that regard, Mike, because, I mean, if I had a super yacht, I would go out on it, too, and be like, you know what? I'll get back in touch with you when I get back into town. Bankrupted Six Flags, whatever. Six Flags is still going, so who cares about that? You know, great Donald Trump bankrupts everything.
Don't be rude.
Oh, stop it, Donald. He charged fans to attend training camp. Yeah, and again, shitty, but come on. I mean, the NFL is charging everybody for everything, so if he wants to charge for training camp, it was his team. All the power to him. They're going to jack up. Everybody jacks up tickets every single year, regardless of how the team does. So let's not, be all high and mighty because Mr. Schneider decided to charge fans for going to training camp. It's a prerogative. Shitty thing, but, I mean, his choice. Stadium is falling apart. Man, I went to the stadium. God, I can't remember when the hell it was. I went with my father-in-law. Toto, what's up? I think it was around 08, 09, around that era. And we went, and he knew somebody affiliated with the team. And so we got down on the field for a hot second. And then we also had, club passes. And, man, we were walking around that stadium, and I kept looking around, and I was like, holy shit, this place is falling apart. Just, chip paint, everything looked fucking broken. And then the weird thing was they had this, I guess it was a cigar lounge, or maybe it was just a bar lounge, but cigars were loud. I don't know, it was specifically focused on cigar, but you walked into this place, and the goddamn thing stunk to high hell. And I was like, how the hell are you getting away with this in, the 2000s, whatever, 2008, whatever the hell it is. A full-on smoking cigars, cancer smoke just blasting around everywhere inside an NFL stadium. I mean, it was crazy. It was unheard of. But, yeah, so the stadium was falling apart. And he didn't fix it because, he didn't want to invest the money. He was trying to buy a new place, a depreciating asset. Why the fuck am I going to put money into this? I am a smart businessman. I just made $5.2 billion, so I knew exactly what I was doing. So take my broken stadium. They were looking for a new one anyway. They couldn't get one. They wanted one closer to D.C. Nobody wanted to deal business with this guy because this guy was obviously just, obviously a cancer to everything that he touched. And so nobody wanted to be in business with Mr. Snyder. So was there anything else they noted there? No, there wasn't. So, and that's basically the lowdown on the Commanders here. What happens to them at this point? Who knows? I would think that, one of the things that is going to come up immediately is the stadium. What are they going to do with that? I would imagine that this team, now, Harris, he owns the 76ers and the Devils, so he has been involved in the professional sports environment for quite a while, and as an owner of other teams, he probably knows exactly what he wants to do. If there is a stadium deal to be had, it'll probably happen pretty quickly because it sounds like Schneider was trying to do it anyway, so people have talked about it. So whatever ideas were out there, they still exist. So I'm sure Harris is going to fire away and get the new stadium movement going, which you will see. Now, how long it takes to build, who the hell knows, but I don't think it'll be that long. Should this sale go through, right, and that Mr. Steve, whatever, Canadian Steve A., right, that's what we were calling him, doesn't come through and outbid him. But even if the billionaire from Canada, Stevie A., comes through, the same thing will happen, right, because the stadium needs to be redone. So that big day for the NFL. As for how things move forward, they're going to keep this ship, at least in the near term. They're pot committed to going on this year. Hopefully, Steve, or whatever, not Steve, but Harris will come in and trying to figure out whether or not this is the correct approach. Again, I don't think it is. But at least for 2023, what are you going to do at this point? You're not going to get rid of Rivera. You're kind of pot committed to everything that you got going on. They're going to put Howell under center and hope that, pulls out some kind of success for the team on the field. As for what happens in 24, that's the bigger question. So, stage one is going to be the approval of this owner. He's going to take the reins. They'll see what happens on the field this year and then take it from there. You could see a huge, colossal turnaround throughout the member club in the offseason. That is for sure. But who knows? Maybe if this year ends up having some kind of success, you will see them at least, let Rivera kind of close out. I don't think Rivera is terrible. But one of the funny things is obviously when big stories like this hit, everybody in the Brothers got to take, me included. I'm an asshole too. But you go to ESPN, I can't help it. It's like moths to a flame, right? I can't stand ESPN, and I go to ESPN anyway. And I fire up ESPN, and I get my girl, the great Mina Kimes, is spouting off. If it's not Stephen A., they always just take this one person, right? And now it's Mina Kimes. Now, Mina Kimes was actually just in the news because there was jerk-offs up in Boston making jokes about greatest nips ever, right? Which I didn't even hear the bit, but I think they might have been talking about small beers, which used to be called nips. And then the one guy throws Mina Kimes in there, which I didn't even know, but I guess she's of, Korean descent. So, and that was his big joke, and obviously nobody laughed at that, and then he was, wrong one. He was ex-nayed. I don't know if he was fired. I think it was a producer. It wasn't even an on-air guy. But he at least got a suspension without pay. But anyway, Mina Khan is everywhere now. If you follow her on Twitter, and I did, because again, I know this is something innate in me. This is one of those, when you self-analyze yourself on your own couch and you start looking up and you're like, you know what could I do better, or what is wrong with me? The fact that I follow so much shit that I hate, there's something about that. There's definitely some kind of therapist out there that could be like, Rich, do you know why you do that? You do that because of this. You're fucking psycho. But anyway, so Mina Kimes' Twitter is horrific, because she just has the most obvious shit ever. And sometimes it's with like a little quippy, comedic attempt, and it always falls flat. So she goes between being this like, I'm a personality and media darling, and then she goes into her background. We'll fill up the background here, because without it, you won't really appreciate, the next clip as you will. She went to Hale. She went to Hale. What the hell is Hale? Hale University? You've never heard of it? It's the sister university of Yale University. So you go to Yale. Graduates. She doesn't come on to the sports scene for a little bit, right? Because when she starts her career, she starts in business. Obviously, journalist from Yale. Are you going to go talk about sports? No, you end up talking about business. And so first position was at Fortune Small Business Magazine in 2007. She goes on and on and on in the business journalism environment. She ends up, she joined Bloomberg News in 2013. And then eventually ESPN shoulder taps her in 2014 after she wrote an essay on Tumblr. Is Tumblr still around? I don't even fucking know. Tumblr was around. It probably still is. Probably got bought up by somebody else and is now part of Facebook or something. Who the hell knows? But anyway, so she writes this essay on Tumblr, and it was all about her and her daddy and their experience being Seattle Seahawks fans. Oh, that's the other thing. She's a huge Seahawks fan. So if you don't know Mina Kimes, it's Seahawks. If you don't talk Seahawks, bring in Mina Kimes, because she is the authority on Seahawks football. Why? Because ESPN says so. So anyway, she writes this essay about her and her dad and their bond on the Seahawks. And so ESPN shoulder taps her in 2014. It's like, hey, look, we love you, and we want to bring you on, right? So that was 10 years ago. So at that time, she's 27? All 27 years of her. And she gets she shoulder tap brought in, and now she is the darling that she is, who, I think, if you ask me, next to Stephen A. Smith, the name that I hear the most is Mina Kimes for ESPN. Now, what's funny about this is that I wonder what would happen if Mina Kimes was a 250-pound behemoth, right, that wasn't attractive or skinny. I wonder if her looks was bad, if she would have been catered to the same way she has been her entire journalistic career, right? So, although that's never talked about because she didn't get any of this because she is, she's a fit, attractive woman, and attractive, that's your own decision. I'd say, she's okay. Not my cup of tea, but I mean, she's not ugly. But no, Uncle Rich, you're such a chauvinistic pig. Looks shouldn't have anything to do with it. No shit, they shouldn't. But how many times do you see a 250, 300-pound fucking person on your TV screen talking to you about whatever? None. Unless it's actually like the red carpet thing, because the television's red carpet thing is filled with, it doesn't matter what it is. They just fucking put anybody out there for that one. But yeah, you just don't see it. They're big, gigantic, fat, ugly people are not part of broadcasting and journalism. They're just not. Maybe paper journalism, right? When they don't even have to have a headshot. So anyway, as I was saying, Mina Kimes is the darling child. So they go right to her and they put her right on ESPN. And so let's just hear what the great Mina Kimes has to say about Mr. Snyder and the Washington Redskins.
What does this mean for this organization to be able to take a step in a different
tell
direction?
Us, because you know.
It is massive, not just for this team and its
pause. Size queen.
tortured fan base, but for the entire NFL. I mean, Laura, we're not talking about the turning of a page here.
No,
we're
not
talking about the closing of a book that will go down as one of the most shameful records of any owner in any professional sport, as you laid out there with that timeline, which only touches on some of it. I mean, with Daniel Snyder, we're talking about an owner who oversaw a culture.
Okay, let's just be, it's not just turning a page. It is the closing of a book. Because I can't just say things normally. I have to make them long and eloquent. I'd love to see her talk like this on Around the Horn. No, or, with her Twitter feed. No, just here where we're talking about something that's very serious with the expulsion of the Snyder family out of the NFL. Can you give us your deep thoughts, Jack Handy? I mean, Mina Kimes. And she comes in there and she's turning pages on books. And then also the shame. It's shame. Do you want to know what I think that we should do, random girl who is leading into me and my ability to speak on air for the next 5 minutes? I think that we should shame him, and we should make him walk down the streets of D.C., and we should throw tomatoes at him because he's evil at his very core. He's terrible, and thank God that we have got him out of the NFL. And did I say close this book? I meant close this Bible that we've been suffering through, and this long empire that he has run for so long. All right, back.
In Washington that was toxic and predatory. This is
toxic and predatory. If you haven't heard any of these hot button terms before, I'm going to use all of them here in this next 2 to 5 minutes.
Widely reported on and investigated, who's been accused of directly facilitating that culture, who has been accused of sexual assault himself.
He's a pimp and he's a rapist.
By the way, as well as reportedly harassing and intimidating witnesses and reporters.
Have I not said enough bad things about him? I'll include more. Fucking harasser. Go, play.
An owner who is currently facing federal investigations for some of these charges, as well as the financial misbehavior.
Federal charges on top of it. If it wasn't bad enough that he was assaulted people and he was a rapist and he pimped girls out, maybe even the hairdressers and the cheerleaders, that he also is under congressional investigation for financial wrongdoing.
As well as a new, not like another investigation from the NFL itself. And that is just one thing I do want to highlight, because even if this...
Oh, hold on, stop. She wants to highlight it.
...sale does go through and Daniel Snyder is no longer an NFL owner,
that's gonna happen.
I do think it is imperative that the NFL...
Oh, imperative. There you go. That's a...
finishes that investigation and releases it, because if they do care about transparency and some of the values that they've been espousing as they continue with this...
Oh, Espousing.
investigation, releasing it becomes paramount in my mind.
Oh,
What does this mean for this
paramount.
organization to be able to
Paramount.
take
Let's do it again.
Imperative
Let's
that
just finish
Daniel
this off
Snyder,
here.
and that is just one thing I do want to highlight, because even if the sale does go through
Mm-hmm.
and Daniel Snyder is no longer an NFL owner,
Now, she wants to highlight this. This is very important. This is very important because Mina Kimes says so.
I do think it is imperative that the NFL finishes that investigation
Big
and
words.
releases it, because if they do care about transparency and some of the values that they've been espousing as they continue with this investigation,
Big words.
releasing it becomes paramount in my mind.
What does this mean for this
Paramount.
organization?
Oh, stop playing already. Jesus Christ, Mitch. Hit the stop button. Yeah, so there you go. Mina Kimes thinks it's paramount that regardless of him being thrown out the door, that the NFL release their investigation and the details of said investigation to the general public, because she believes that transparency is paramount. Come on. Let's just be honest here. The NFL wants this goddamn thing to go away. And if they're going to basically look, if fucking Schneider's out of here, we got rid of him, everybody should be happy. Let's not go into all this shit, because we don't really want to talk about everything that we found in this goddamn investigation. Just like we don't want to go and investigate every single NFL player that exists and everything that they do at their mansions on a said Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday night with whoever it is they have in there. Because guess what? It's not good things, right? So if you think it is paramount that we have transparency across the NFL, and the NFL is espousing, did I use that word right? It's espousing their interest in, I don't even know. She said something espousing, whatever, and I didn't go to Yale, so I went to Wake Forest, so I'm not quite up there. But anyway, let's not get into it, right? Because you want to be honest about this stuff. You want to go in the NFL and you want to investigate Schneider and you want this whole investigation to be public, then go out after that and investigate every single person involved in the NFL. And there was, year and change ago, 2 years ago, whenever the John Gruden thing came out, I wrote this big, huge, long thing about John Gruden. I actually have it right here. And I was going to do this as a solo pod. And the whole thing was basically focused. Man, this was long. This was 1, 2, 3, 4. Fuck. It was pages and pages and pages. And it was all about Gruden and how it was complete bullshit, how they railroaded that guy without railroading everybody else that could have been involved or had the same thing done behind closed doors. And not that his comments weren't wrong. Of course they were. And let's be honest, he tried to spin it the best that he could. But, I mean, he just threw out racist comments about DeMarcus Smith and then tried to, I don't know, he did something about Michelin tires, and then he tried to spin it off as the rubber lips. It's something I always said about people, whatever. But the point of what I was saying here and how it relates to what I'm talking about with Mina Kimes is that the whole thing that I wrote was specifically about what a joke it would be to single out one single person that said something privately to somebody without going into and investigating every single individual throughout the NFL. Because if you were to do that and you were to go into the private text messages and emails that go around the league, and you were to see what these owners and GMs and players and everybody else was saying, there would be no league. There would be no league. There would be no professional sports if you applied that across the board. Because, people suck. They say nasty shit. That's the way that it is. So, obviously, the Gruden thing came up because, if those that don't know, it came up in the Snyder investigation, if I'm not mistaken. So within the Snyder investigation, they came across these Gruden emails and then publicized those. So, and then Gruden, it's got a lawsuit going, I think, against the NFL, or undue pride, I don't know, whatever it is, something unjust. But to his point, and then in my thing, I made a relation to Jimmy the Greek Snyder, because that same thing happened to Snyder. He got completely screwed because he was all drunk at some kind of cafe and had a random reporter who saw him and hit him up in the middle of his drunken afternoon lunch session. And I think it was around Martin Luther King Day, maybe it was. I don't know. You'd have to look it up on Google to see what it was. But it was some kind of holiday, and they saw Jimmy the Greek, and he obviously had been throwing a couple of back. Not that I know, but I would assume, hearing him talk. And that was when he mentioned the whole, slave owners breeding slaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it ended his career, right? And it was this guy that had been around for decades and had made a personality out of himself for being basically a gambler, right? Because he was a gambler in nature, and that's where he came up. And he was on CBS, and he was basically doing gambling when you couldn't do gambling, and he was doing it, in a means that was acceptable. But he became himself a celebrity, gold chains, the whole nine. I think he did Schick commercials or maybe Gillette commercials, whatever it was. But Jimmy the Greek was everywhere. And then this random fucking reporter hit him at the wrong time with a couple of beers in him and got him outside of, that guy got dressed up, went on camera, and gave everybody what they wanted, right? And who cares what happens after that? I don't know. There just wasn't requirements to go into everybody's past and make sure that, and vet everybody to make sure that they were good people, because fucking going back in time, they just weren't, right? I mean, look at all the controversies you've had with broadcasters in the recent past. They end up just being dirtballs. And I mean, that's just celebrities. They're just people. Like, you don't know what happens when you get a ton of money. But anyway, they caught Jimmy the Greek. Jimmy the Greek was out. That was it. He, that ended his career, and he never got another job, never got another crack at it. I think he ended up, ended up just being, I don't know about broke, but I mean, his life just ended. They think they did a 30 for 30 about him too. And it just kind of ruined him because, and if you talk to people, like he wasn't an overt racist, he just said stupid shit. And I think one of the quotes was that, like, Jimmy just thought he was super smart about everything. And so if you got him talking, he just wouldn't know when to stop. And, at this one random luncheonette, he got caught, and that was the end of it. But should that have even been aired? It was my question. And what I was talking about in this never aired podcast that I wrote out was maybe it should just never have aired, right? Like, that guy should have been like, you know what? I'm going to end this guy's career if I air this. And is this really newsworthy? Like, this guy just said this stupid ass shit. It's kind of racist in nature, but ultimately, like, what does he do? He goes on the NFL on CBS, and he does his little gambling bit. He pops up here and there, and I just don't know about. Maybe I just caught him at the wrong time. Maybe I just shouldn't air this. You know what? Just 86 that video. I don't want to air it. It's going to end his career, and I don't know enough about the guy to know if that is that is really him, or he was just saying stupid shit. Maybe he's intoxicated. I don't know, but we're just going to 86 it. That's probably what should have happened. Now, the Gruden thing is a little bit different, obviously, because it comes up in an investigation, but it did get leaked, right? So that didn't, if I'm not chopping the story up, that didn't just come out of nowhere. Like, that ended up, somebody leaked that to the press. They didn't leak the rest of the investigation, but they leaked that, and that's what ended Gruden's thing. Now, Gruden had a career in the NFL that spanned decades, right? And I know that there were people that came out, I think Keyshawn Johnson came out and said specifically, like, I don't like that fucking guy. I never did. I told everybody he was a piece of shit. But I don't know. It wasn't something that you had heard before this. Maybe Keyshawn did, because Keyshawn had specific problems in Tampa Bay with him, but it wasn't something that you had heard said about Gruden on the whole. And you would think that if a coach, former Monday Night Football broadcaster, was such a blatant, overt racist, he never would have gotten to where he was. But this one email caught him, and it got leaked out, and that was the end of that. And, my point of what I was trying to say in this podcast was just like, let's not all sit, in our glass house here and throw stones and go into, everybody's private emails and text messages. Because if we were to do that across the board in sports, like I just said, it would be a really ugly result. And so here, as it applies to Snyder, enough. Enough, mankind. Yeah. The guy was a shithead. Everybody knows it. He's out. So let's just get rid of this story and move on. Right? And for the NFL's investigation, they might be forced to come public with it because they made it such a focal point, but everybody knows about it. So they might be held to put it out there by public, by public force, not by I don't know, legally they might. Well, legally maybe they could be forced to publicize it because, the whole antitrust thing and the broadcasting, that whole thing. I don't know. I'm not going to get into the legal thing. I'll let Mike Florio do that. But I would imagine that they just try to get rid of it. And I don't think it's a big deal if they do. Because the point of the whole thing was to go into Snyder. Snyder is now out, so who the fuck cares? And that's it. And, as to what was in that investigation, I'm sure a lot of bad shit, because the reality is a lot of bad shit is everywhere in the NFL. But what the hell do we care? Because we sit there and we watch football on a Sunday. And that's what we are, and that's what they are. They're putting their bodies on the line. They're risking paralysis, heart attacks, broken bones, CTE, everything else. And so we watch that, and we accept all those ills that those people could or will experience down the road, and for our enjoyment. So now are we going to sit here, and we're also going to want to go into their private lives and make sure that they're good, upfront, standing citizens? I mean, stop it. It doesn't make any kind of sense. But anyway, so that's it for today. I will be back. We'll end up the week on a Friday. We have finally made it. So 1 full week of doing these shows. This one ended up being 40 minutes. I said I was going to make these things 15 to 20 minutes. I went off on 40 minutes here. I think it was 30 minutes before it hit me at times, and then that went on and on. But anyway, so Audi, talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.